So in verse 20, Jesus says, again, quoted it already, unless your righteousness, your acts of justice, your commitment to justice, in terms of your covenantal responsibility to those around you, unless it exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you don't get to participate in the kingdom of heaven. How do you do that? Well, as we go on in Matthew chapter 5, one of the things that we find is that Jesus is expanding what it means to keep the law, right? It's beyond just not murdering someone. It's not saying in your heart that I wish they were dead. It's beyond keeping away from the physical act of adultery. It is saying in your heart, I want only the one that God has apportioned for me. It goes beyond yearning after an eye for an eye or a tooth for a tooth. It embraces the fact that there may be suffering along the way, and I am going to seek in the middle of my broken condition to live in a way that loves others. How does it cash out for us? It cashes out in love. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. And then Jesus goes on in chapter 5, verse 48, and says, therefore, be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. I read that and I'm like, okay, that's even a higher standard than the scribes and Pharisees thing. And I think when you look at this in context, what Jesus is talking about first and foremost in Matthew chapter 5, verses 21 through 48, is he's talking about perfection of love. Make love our aim. St. Paul writes in 1 Timothy, he says the goal of our instruction is love from a pure heart, love from a sincere faith, love from a good conscience. The goal of everything is love. It is not tithing to the tiniest grain of mustard. It is not making sure that we have this kind of punctilious and detailed and exacting kind of commitment to the law. Does it mean we don't have a commitment to following through with what the Lord requires of us? No, it doesn't mean that at all. Of course we do that. But we do it in a way that prioritizes love. We go on into chapter 6, and I'm not trying to steal anybody's thunder. I'm just trying to say how Matthew 5, 17 through 20 kind of plays out, and why I think it's so important for understanding all of the Sermon on the Mount. What is it that Jesus says in pretty much all of chapter 6? He says, look, if you're doing things to be seen by others, if your righteousness is so that others will see what you're doing, you've got your reward already. If your giving of alms is so that others will see you, you're a hypocrite. Your reward, you have it already. If your desire in praying is to be seen by others, you're a hypocrite. You've got your reward already. If your desire in fasting is to be seen by others, you're a hypocrite. You've got your reward already. When we tie that in then with Matthew chapter 23, we find that Jesus says over and over again, woe to you, scribes, Pharisees, hypocrites. Who's he talking about in chapter 6? I think he's talking about the scribes and Pharisees. And we don't want to be that. And so one of the things that Jesus is criticizing is this kind of public display of religiosity that takes us far afield from the truth. You know, in the book of James, true religion, undefiled before God, has to do with the care and the keeping of widows and orphans. Has to do with reaching out and caring for those that you can care for. Being open and excited about that. Not so that others will see you, but so that they will be cared for, because Jesus has put folks in our way to care for. Now, going back then, I said we'd go back to chapter 5, verse 16, where Jesus says, so let your light shine, right? So that others will see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. This is a part of what I think is the throwdown with the scribes and Pharisees. They are indeed doing good things, but they are doing them to be seen by others. Jesus' standard here is do the things that you do. Care for those that need care by giving. Fast, of course, right? Pray, of course. Love one another, of course. But do it in a way that causes others to glorify your Father, not ourselves. It's not about me. It's about the work of the kingdom of God. And the scribes and Pharisees, their righteousness seems to be what Jesus is saying is that their righteousness is a self-centered kind of righteousness that serves their own purpose. My friends, our obedience to the law, obedience to the spirit of the law, cannot be about ourselves. It's interesting to me. Psalm 119, verse 7 says, the law of the Lord is perfect, converting or restoring the soul. I think maybe Jesus had that in mind here. That when it comes to keeping the intent and the purity of the law, it's not about fine and detailed specifics that are rooted in just making sure I've dotted all my I's and crossed all my T's. It is about making sure that love is my aim, that others are my aim. I don't murder because I prioritize others rather than myself. I don't commit adultery because I prioritize others other than myself. I do not swear falsely because I prioritize others other than myself. Right? That's our approach. Are we perfect in that? Nope. Nope, we're not. But what we can do, when we make love our aim, when we make that the goal, and we return to that priority over and over and over again, we'll find ourselves growing in faith, growing in certainly a good kind of spiritual knowledge, not in a kind of a Gnostic and haughty way, but in a knowledge of the Lord working in our lives to transform this human person that would be on my own given to thoughts of evil about others, or to adultery in my heart, or possibly, infleshed, to revenge, to using religious language to exact revenge against others, using my religious language as a way to make my political point. And that's one of the things that the Pharisees were doing as well. Jesus says no. Jesus says, you want to let your light shine before men? You want your Father in heaven to be glorified? Then this is what you do. You love unconditionally. You practice acts of righteousness, not to be seen by others, but knowing that your Father, who sees in secret, rewards openly. And in doing that kind of act, it's counterintuitive, because it looks like we should do what the scribes and Pharisees are doing, because that seems to be working. But Jesus says, no. I've looked at that. They've been weighed in the balance and been found wanting. No, you let your righteousness exceed that of the scribes and Pharisees. And you do that by loving others rather than yourself. Love you guys.